Okay, today we're in LA and we're fixing a few cracks on smooth coat finish. It's a hand application where when we mix the bag and base, we tend to like it as a peanut butter consistency. But when you go back to fix the cracks, what we do is we like to take this material and then add a little more glue to it. And what we're using today is a Sienna Admix AX300. And after we mix our material to an even consistency and box the materials together, we'll make this material much wetter so that the aggregate will settle to the bottom, and then we're able to use the cream to apply it perpendicular to the cracks where it'll adhere to this surface as an even plane.
Love it.
Okay, go ahead.
On your house, you use the Merlex 2030 base with the P124 color additive box, and the reason we're mixing that the same today is because the process that we use would be to have mixed this ratio with one bag and base, and the reason we're doing that the same even for the cracks today is because we have to use the same color. Even if it's going to be an excessive amount, there's going to be a lot left over, but we have to mix it the same ratio, so we have to come back and have the same color today, even feeling a little minute crack.
Yeah.
And then the mixing process includes the same that we use when we use the mixer. So we have to mix a whole bag, which is 9-pound sack. And one sack requires probably to get started about a half bucket of water per bucket.
How do you tell about the consistency?
Of the water?
Yeah.
Well, I know that I'm going to need about a half bucket of water. By the time I dump all the colors, the water hose is going to make all the little granules colored in well. So I just fill this up where I know that I can take and dump half this. But when we're done, what we're going to do is eyeball these two levels of the color itself, and then we're going to add the base in. And then we're going to use a process called boxing the color.
Oh, okay.
So we'll get all that in these buckets, all the rest of the base in these buckets, and then we'll box one to the other until we get a consistent color.
Okay.
You're gonna go ahead and mix it, right, with the mixer?
Yeah. No, you don't have to mix that. That part I mixed it up with a hose.
Oh, okay.
See, what I would do, being a cook, I would weigh these things. I would only use half of it.
You don't need to?
Yeah.
Yeah, because the way we're doing it is you're just going back and forth
Yeah.
and mixing it that way?
Yeah.
Like you said, boxing it?
Yeah, cooking is very similar. If
Yeah.
you try to actually eyeball it, or you can feel. Half
Yeah.
the time you get to know the feel of the
Right.
consistency of the material.
Okay, let's shut down the garage door.
Okay. So you can tell after doing it, you want this to be in a hand trowel application about the thickness or consistency of the peanut butter. But when you're in the cracks, you want it a lot thinner. So really, what you want to do is separate. There's an aggregate in here, and the reason the aggregate is the sand in there. It's a 2030 grit. And you can have a 1620. So 1620, the smaller the number, the larger the grit the sand is. And there's even smaller. It's called a Mission Finish or Santa Barbara, and there is no grit to that. And we prefer the 2030 because the grit gives you more of a stronger surface, which is what we apply to the exterior of the walls.
Oh, okay, I didn't realize that.
Because there is no sand or aggregate. Same as in concrete. There's a pebble, a smaller aggregate, and then there's the bigger chunks. If you ever seen the concrete broken up,
Yeah.
I think the bigger the grit, the better, the more stronger it is. Okay, see, we just kind of eyeballed it at first, but this is the process that brings the two colors, the two together.
To make sure the color is consistent.
Yeah, this is the box, called boxing. You see it really bringing the top to the bottom? Alright, the whirlpool effect. So you know it's really bringing it all together. And I like to do this probably about 3 or 4 times. Back and forth. Two. Now you'd think all the color is going to stay in the bottom of that, but just like I said,
Moves up.
this wheel, when you turn it, it creates a whirlpool effect, so it really brings the top to the bottom and it so mixes it together properly. So we're evening it out now. Actually, we'll probably use less than that.
Ah, now how much you put of this in that?
It's usually around a cup per sack. It's plenty. Manufacturer's recommendations. Okay. Now I need to dump some of that water out of there because I need to put the mud in it.
Yeah, just a second. Yeah, let me stop the video and open this up and we can, there's nowhere in here.
Crack.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing is, what'll happen is when we're mixing this, eventually, even by the time I carry it over to that area we're going to be working, what's going to happen is the aggregate, like I was telling you, the sand
It'll
in
settle.
there, you can even see the grit of the.
It'll start settling, I see.
It'll settle to the bottom,
Yeah.
and the color and the cream will rise to the top.
Wow.
And that's really, you're still going to get a little bit of the aggregate that wants to find itself into the crack.
Yeah.
But the cream is going to work its way to the surface because it's going to push the aggregate to the back, and then we'll cross our float with.
Yeah.
See, if you have a crack running parallel to the ground, you want to run your float perpendicular
Right,
to that.
right.
So it'll grab it because really,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you run your float or tool parallel to the crack,
Yeah.
it's just going to drag it out.
Yeah.
If you apply it with the green float
Yeah.
perpendicular, it'll
Okay.
grab inside the
Oh,
crack
should
and then
be.
find itself
Okay.
a plane
Show me that when we get over there.
across that
So
surface.
you'll point that out. Wow, it really is soupy. But normally you wouldn't have it this consistency if you're doing an entire house, right?
Oh, no. It
You
would be
have
just
it
like-
more like
like
that.
that.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's like that for the hand trowel
Okay.
application.
Okay. Wow. Soupy. Holy crap. Ew. Okay.
guys. It's almost like milkshake.
So this is milkshake for tiny cracks. I
Yes.
just want to say that. And this is the consistency for the whole house.
Yeah, peanut butter and then I guess you could say a milkshake is almost the same texture or consistency as maybe a runny milkshake. So you can really see how wet that is.
Yeah. It's really,
So
wow, that's
that
that.
all that even
Oh my
as we're
God.
speaking, the aggregate is settling to the bottom and bringing the
So do you stir it like when you get over there and you're working with it? Do you keep stirring it?
no, I want it to settle. So I'm gonna be dipping my float into there,
Oh, okay.
and in the float is like a sponge, and it's gonna pull that cream with the float.
Oh,
And then I'll
okay.
apply that to the wall, and then
Okay.
if it's a thicker crack, then I'll stick my float deeper into the bottom where the aggregate is settled,
Okay.
and then apply some of the aggregate into the crack first.
Okay.
But these cracks are very fine and thin, and I still like a little bit of the aggregate because it gives a little beef to it
Yeah.
first. So that's our material, and we're using that. We're not gonna need to mix anymore.
Okay, let me
With the
undo
drill.
it so we can get out of here.
Yes,
It's
ma'am.
like being trapped.
Crack patching on smooth coat, I found that it's best, in my experience, to adhere the material that we spoke about earlier into the crack while the surface is dry, because it almost immediately adheres or bonds into the crack, allowing you to build, even though it's a small area in the cracks, when it dries it allows you to build inside the crack, because what we're trying to do is make the smallest aggregate and the cream settle into the crack. And running the green float perpendicular to the crack in a circular motion in itself is building the material inside and allowing us to fill the crack with the cream, because it's so fine that even 20-30 aggregate, which you can see the sand, won't fit into the crack. So really the sand is just finding itself into the float. And it's better for us because we want the sand out of the way, because it'll just drag itself around and make swirl marks in the cream or the film, the color itself. And then later we're going to come back after it dries right away and buff the surface, so that the only material that we're leaving here today is going to be what's finding itself in the circular motion into the crack itself. See now how now you can see those lighter swirl marks? And the reason this looks lighter than it does here is because when we use the hand trowel application, it exposes the aggregate. That's why sometimes in a smooth coat you'll see a darker area, is because the aggregate is exposed more than it is here where the cream is mostly on the surface. And we don't want this lighter area, so when you're patching cracks, we'll buff the plane of the surface off so that it leaves only the material in the crack itself. And then even while this stuff is dry on the surface, it's going to build that second layer on top of the crack while we're buffing it out. I'm going to need clean water. I like to buff the surface off with clean water, because really all you're going to be doing is you take this dirty float, it's applying another layer on top of that. And really what you want to do is remove it off of the existing surface and leave it only in the crack.
And we need some.
That's plenty of material to drag it back around again. Okay, Jack. Can I ask a favor, Stud?
Sure.
Can I have the, you know that bucket we had that was clean? Actually, can we, of the two buckets, the one that has less material in there, can we dump it out and then we'll put clean water in there so I can buff this off the surface?
Okay.
Please. Well, and after you apply the material into the crack itself at a circular motion, trying mostly to run your material perpendicular to the crack, you'll have a residue buildup on the existing surface. So I like to go back with water once more and try to buff that material off the surface so that all you're leaving now is the material in the crack itself. And even after having washed it with water, there'll still be a little bit of a lighter or visible residue on the surface. So once that dries once more, then we can hit it dry because it with the flow dry instead of applying water, so that the dust will come off the surface itself too, leaving once again only the material in the crack.